Welcome to this particular session where I am going to take you through CAT PYQs, and we are specifically focusing on CAT 24 slot 1 VARC, and this is going to be the first session on CAT 24 slot 1, and of course I will take you through more. The reason behind going through PYQs is very obvious, that once you are prepared, you would like to attempt questions that take you as close to the examiner's mindset as you possibly can get, and the surest way of doing that is by attempting the PYQs. So here it is. Let's go ahead and start with our first question. Now different sets obviously have different sequence, different orders. The one that I went through started with a sentence placement question where we are given a sentence followed by a paragraph with 4 blanks, and our job is to put that sentence at its most appropriate place. So let's start with the sentence. Comprehending a wide range of emotions, Renaissance music nevertheless portrayed all emotions in a balanced and moderate fashion. Okay, so this particular sentence goes ahead and tells us about a particular property of Renaissance music. Let's start with this. A volume of translated Italian madrigals were published in London during the year of 1588. Okay, madrigal is basically a song where there are no instruments. So there are multiple singers who sing this same song together, but their tones, their pitch varies. So one person would say the other at the same time would also be at a higher pitch, right? So they're singing together and creating that nice richness. Those kind of songs are called madrigals. So a volume of translated Italian madrigals were published in London during the year of 1588. This sudden public interest facilitated a surge of English madrigal writing as well as a spurt of other secular music writing and publication. All right. So this music boom lasted for 30 years and was as much a golden age of music as British literature was with Shakespeare and Queen Elizabeth I. So you notice this music boom. This is referring to this. So if I put the lost sentence here, this sentence in blank 1, I lose this reference, so I can eliminate this. So Shakespeare, Queen Elizabeth, when the rebirth in both literature and music originated in Italy and migrated to England, the English madrigal became more humorous and lighter in England as compared to Italy. Renaissance music was mostly polyphonic texts. So you notice Renaissance is coming here. So we can, since it's talking about a characteristic of Renaissance music, you can eliminate blank 2 as well. So it has to be either blank 3 or blank 4. So let's check. Renaissance music was mostly polyphonic in texture. Polyphonic is multiple sounds. Extreme use of and contrasts in dynamics, rhythm and tone color do not occur. Okay. So 3 or 4, let's check. When I look at the lost sentence, I notice that it is in past tense. Now, this is past, but this is present. So I can put it at 3 and that makes sense. Past tense, then present. But if I put it at 4, we have moved from past to present and then again to past. That tense switch will become abrupt. It will not be coherent. So this can be ruled out, and the best blank will be blank 3, and that, okay, this should be option 2, sorry, that corresponds to option D. And that's your answer right there for this particular question. Okay, so let's go ahead and dive into our question number 2. The passage given below is followed by 4 alternate summaries. Choose the option that best captures the essence of the passage. Let's check. Cartographers. Cartographers are people who make maps. So cartographers design and create maps to communicate information about phenomena located somewhere on a planet. Obviously, yes. In the past, cartographers did not worry too much about who was going to read their maps. They did not care about who's going to use them. Although some simple usability research was done, like comparing whether circle or bar symbols worked best, cartographers knew how to make maps. This has changed now, however, due to all kinds of societal and technological developments. Today, map readers are more demanding, mostly because of the tools they use to read maps. For example, I use a cell phone. Cartographers who are also influenced by these trends are now more interested in seeing if their products are efficient, effective and appreciated. Okay, so we've gone through this. Let's start. A. New technological developments have prompted cartographers to experiment with their maps by applying these new innovations. Where does the passage say that the new innovations have made them experiment? So cartographers who are influenced by these trends do these certain things. Does that mean that all the cartographers are doing it? In fact, all of them are. So yeah, but are they experimenting? They are interested in seeing if their products are still a good fit. But are they experimenting? And are they applying these new innovations? That's something that has not been stated anywhere. So addition would typically make an option incorrect anyway. Today, cartographers also need to look into the usability of maps because of the new technological developments. Yes, this is something that we can infer. Modern map makers evaluate a map's effectiveness, efficiency, and satisfaction of the user through a series of experiments. No, this is not mentioned. Maps are being used for a variety of reasons, and therefore map readers have become more demanding. Variety of reasons is not given anywhere. So actually, none of these options is a great summary, but as we can see, A, C, and D bringing additions. They are talking about things which are not even present in the paragraph, whereas B is at least consistent with the theme of the paragraph. So they need to look at the usability of the map. So you notice they have become demanding because how they read maps, and that is influenced by societal and technological developments. So part of it is technological development, although societal developments are also responsible. So cartographers are now more interested in seeing if their products are efficient, effective, and appreciated. So these are aspects of course, at least efficient and effective are linked with usability, and therefore this can be at least inferred from the paragraph, and thus B should be your best answer to this particular question. So let's go ahead and dive into this particular passage, which will of course be followed by 4 questions. So let's start. Landing in Australia, the British colonists were not much impressed with the small-bodied, slender-snooted marsupials called bandicoots. Okay, so British colonists. So you know that the Britishers colonized a lot of different parts of the world. When they landed in Australia, they saw a particular animal called bandicoot. Now they're using a term called marsupial. So marsupials are a special kind of animals. So you notice that we have animals that lay eggs, and we have animals that give birth to children, and then we have this category in between. Animals that give birth to a child, but then they typically have a pouch on their body where that child is kept until it can survive on its own. The most popular example of a marsupial is a kangaroo. So they came across bandicoot, which was a marsupial, and it had slender snooted. So the snoot is the kind of nose, slender is something which is slim, maybe long, and they were small bodied. So there you go. Their muzzle, which is much too long. Muzzle again, you notice when we talk about a dog, the part that extends and has those teeth is called a muzzle, right? We in fact cover it. When we muzzle a dog, you cover it. So what we are calling a slender snooted here, that snoot is called a muzzle here. So their muzzle, which is much too long, gives them an air exceedingly stupid. So their muzzle, their snoot is slender, it is long, and it makes them look stupid. It gives them a vibe that tells you that they are stupid. One naturalist noted in 1805, they nicknamed one type the zebra rat because of its black striped rump. Rump is the backside of an animal, the buttocks basically, because of its black striped rump. Okay, then silly looking or not, though, the zebra rat, the smallest bandicoot, more commonly known today as the western barred bandicoot, exhibited a genius for survival in the harsh outback where its ancestors had persisted for some 26 million years. So what we are saying here is that, okay, they may look silly to you, they may not look silly to you. They were earlier called zebra rat. Nowadays you call them western barred bandicoots. They are the smallest bandicoots. So they were a genius when it came to surviving there in the wild. Their ancestors lived there for 26 million years. I mean, a species that has survived for that long. So its births were triggered by rainfall in the bone dry desert. So they lived in a desert. When did they produce offspring? when there was a rainfall in the desert. It carried its breath mint size babies. So breath mints are like very tiny, very small. So we are saying that their babies were very small. So where did they carry them? In a backward facing pouch, just like a kangaroo, but a kangaroo has a pouch on the stomach. Here we are saying that the pouch is backward facing, so mothers could forage for food, right? So they must have been hunting. So foraging for food is basically where you go out looking for food in the wild. So since they are kind of like a rat and they're walking on all fours, their children are probably on their back, and they dig shallow camouflaged shelters. So they dig a shelter. That shelter is camouflaged, which basically means that it is not easy to detect, and it is shallow, so they don't dig it very deep. Why? Because they have a pouch which is backward facing. Their children are in there, so obviously they cannot dig deep, otherwise their kids will get buried with them. So still, these adaptations did not prepare the western barred bandicoot for the colonial era transformation of its ecosystem. So it had a lot of unique adaptations that were suitable for surviving in that landscape. But when the British colonists came in, they transformed the ecosystem, and their adaptations were not sufficient to meet those new challenges. What kind of challenges? Particularly the onslaught of imported British animals, from cattle and rabbits that damaged delicate desert vegetation, to ravenous house cats. Somebody who's ravenous is very greedy, hungry all the time in this case, that soon developed a taste for bandicoots. So cats generally eat rats, and they probably felt that, hey, bandicoot, particularly this one, is just like a rat, so it's a fair game for me. Several of the dozen odd bandicoot species went extinct, and by the 1940s, the western barred bandicoot, whose original range stretched across much of the continent, persisted only on 2 predator-free islands in Shark Bay off Australia's western coast. So a lot of species got wiped away, and today there are these 2 isolated islands where you do not have these which did not face this onslaught of these new predators, and that is where these species today survive. Then moving on to the next. Our isolated fauna had simply not been exposed to these predators, says the Reese Pedler, an ecologist with the Wild Deserts Conservation Program. So our isolated fauna had simply not been exposed. So isolated. So basically Australia was a separate island altogether. It had a lot of unique set of animals. Even today, I mean, you don't find kangaroos anywhere else. And the reason was that they were isolated from the rest of the world, and they did not have those predators which now they got exposed to. So now wild deserts, now you notice this capital W, capital D. So it's a proper noun. We are probably talking about some sort of NGO, a conservation program. Now wild deserts is using descendants of those few thousand island survivors called Shark Bay bandicoots in a new effort to seed a mainland bandicoot revival. When you seed, it basically means that now you want bandicoots to return to the mainland, but there are no bandicoots there. So you're bringing those bandicoots from those Shark Bay islands to the mainland, and that population that you would shift will act as a seed for bandicoots to thrive on the mainland as well. So they have imported 20 bandicoots to a preserve on the edge of the 𝐁𝐀𝐄𝐄 Desert in the remote interior of New South Wales. I hope I've gotten this right. Well, let's see. This sanctuary is a challenging place, desolate much of the year. Now, when we use desolate for human beings, we're talking about people who are extremely sad. That's where we start calling them desolate. For places, a desolate place will be a place which is empty, a place which is not very attractive, with no people and nothing pleasant there. Why? Desolate much of the year with one of the world's most mercurial rainfall patterns. Mercurial here in this context will be unpredictable. So it's a desert, so you don't get much rainfall, and even when you get it, there is no pattern to it. It just rains all of a sudden, no rhyme, no reason. Relentless droughts followed by a sudden drenching flood. So relentless droughts. A drought is a situation of extreme where there is little or no rain. So relentless is prolonged periods of no rain, and then suddenly you have these drenching floods. Now the imported bandicoots occupy 2 fenced exclosures. So normally we have enclosures where we keep some animals. Here we are calling them exclosures, where X generally means out So these, so it's not a standard word. They're using these quotes to tell you that they normally use it to tell you that either it is a new term or it is an old term which is being used in a new way. So exclosures cleared of invasive rabbits, courtesy of peddler's sheepdog, and of feral cats which slunk off once the rabbits disappeared. A third fenced area contains the program's wild training zone, where two other rare marsupials, bilbies, a larger type of bandicoot, and mulgaris, a somewhat fearsome fuzzball known for sucking the brains out of prey, currently share terrain with controlled number of cats. Okay, so they have a third area, wild training zone, where they're keeping two other species of bandicoot, and they are teaching them to live with cats. How? Learning to evade them. So they basically put a limited number of cats with these, and the idea is that, hey, maybe this exposure will tell them how to survive even when there are cats around. So they're kind of training them to survive in the presence of the cats. It's unclear whether the Shark Bay bandicoots, which are perhaps even more predator naive than their now extinct mainland bandicoot kin, will be able to make that kind of breakthroughs. You think, okay, these two species we are trying, but these bandicoots that we have so far talked about, we are not very sure whether they are capable of that, acquiring that skill or not. For now, though, a recent surge of rainfall has led to a bandicoot joey boom. Joey is the young one of marsupials. So the kangaroo's kid is called a joey. Bandicoot's child must also have been called a joey. So a boom. So remember, rain leads to births. So there is rain. So there are a lot of kids being born, raising the wild desert's population to about 100. We introduced 20. And now there are 100 of them, with other sanctuaries adding to that number. There are also signs of rebirth in the landscape itself. How? With their constant digging, the bandicoots trap moisture and allow for seed germination so the cattle damaged desert can restore itself. So they're also contributing towards the rejuvenation of the desert. They have a new nickname, a flattering one this time. A flattering is something that praises them. We call them ecosystem engineers, Peddler says. Okay, so with that, let's get into the questions. So here is your question number 3. Which one of the following statements provides a gist of this passage? So this is basically what? A main idea question. And in main idea questions, we can always work with the elimination. We always, in fact, even otherwise work with elimination. But before we start, what is this about? It is talking about bandicoot species in Australia that got nearly wiped out. And now there are efforts being made to restore their population, reintroduce them to the mainland. That's basically what this is about, right? So that's the topic, and it is a descriptive passage. There is no opinion. It's just talking about a particular phenomenon. So let's start. The onslaught of animals such as cattle, rabbits, and house cats brought in by the British led to the extinction of the western barred bandicoot. This is false. They're not extinct. They still survive on 2 islands. So this can't be your answer. B. A type of bandicoots was nearly wiped out by invasive species, but rescuers now pin hopes on a remnant island population. Yes, this is quite close, but we still compare. Marsupials are going extinct due to the colonial era transformation. Are we talking about all the marsupials in this passage? No, we are talking about only one. That's bandicoots. So this is a broad answer choice. This goes beyond the scope of this particular passage. Then D, the negligent attitude of the British colonists towards these bandicoots, evidenced by the names given to them, led to their annihilation. So number 1, annihilation is complete and utter destruction. They have not been annihilated. So some of them still survive. Moreover, is the reason their negligent attitude? And did the name they give to it show their negligence or their hatred? So it's wrong on multiple counts. And as a result, we are left with B, and that is the one that we can go ahead and mark as our answer. Here is the next one. The text uses the word exclosures because wild deserts are adapted measures of. So they're calling it exclosures because they're using some strategy. What is that strategy? Let's go ahead and check that out. Restoring cattle damaged deserts to green landscapes. No. That is something that the bandicoots are doing. The wild deserts guys are not doing that. Barring the entry of invasive species, yes, these are areas where they have gotten rid of rabbits and cats. Excluding animals to make the island predator free. Are they making the entire island predator free or a part of the island. So this is a generalization. So that's also wrong. Ridding the main desert of feral cats and large bilbies. Okay, first up, are they ridding the main desert or some parts of the desert? Some parts. Feral cats, yes. Are they ridding them of large bilbies? No, they are in fact introducing them to that area. So even this gets ruled out. So our best answer will be option B once again. Let me take you to the next one. Question number 5. According to the text, the western barred bandicoots now have a flattering name because they have the very last line where they were called what? Ecological engineers. Why was that name given? Because they are contributing towards seed germination in that desert. So let's see which idea comes close. Aided in altering an arid environment, a dry environment where nothing grows. They are contributing towards altering that. Yes. Led to a surge and increase of rainfall? No. They are helping seeds germinate by digging that captures moisture. They are not contributing towards rainfall. Led a revival in preserving the species? No. Grown fivefolds in terms of population? Yes, they have, but that's not the reason for their name. And that is why the best answer is going to be option A. Now this question requires you to recall the last part where the term flattering name was used. Otherwise we would have struggled with it. And here comes the next question, question number 6. Which one of the following options does not represent the characteristics of the western barred bandicoot? So this is more of a specific detail question. Let's see which all are characteristics. Look of a rat but with a baby pouch and a slender snout? Absolutely. They look like a rat. They have a baby pouch, slender snout. Yes. So this can't be our answer. We are looking for something that does not represent. Long thin nose? Yes. Black striped back, rump, striped pouch for joeys? Yes. So this can be also ruled out. Shallow diggers? Yes. They have an elongated muzzle? Yes. Let's rule this out. Smallest black striped marsupials that uses camouflage and dig. Smallest black striped marsupial. Smallest marsupial. Let's just go and check. I do recall reading this somewhere. It is the smallest bandicoot. Among all the bandicoots, this is the smallest. Is it the smallest marsupial? I don't know. Maybe there is some other type of marsupial which is even smaller. So this is something that I'm not sure of. It uses camouflage and dig. Yes, it does use camouflage shelters. So yeah, but this part is not certain. And therefore, this is something that we are not sure of for being the characteristics of the bandicoots. So our answer here should be option D, and that allows us to take care of this particular passage. So let's go ahead and have a look at this particular passage that talks about a theme that chances are is already familiar to you and of course me. So let's go ahead, let's begin. In the summer of 2022, subscribers to the US streaming service HBO Max were alarmed to discover that dozens of the platform's offerings, from the COVID-themed heist thriller Lockdown to the recent remake of The Witches, had been quietly removed from the service. So we know that streaming service all the time keep pushing things out of their catalog. It happens. But have you ever thought of it? There were a lot of people who were outraging on these things. Now, why? See, the news seemed like vindication to those who had long warned that streaming was more about controlling access to the cultural commons than expanding it. So see, what do you mean by vindication? If somebody feels vindicated, then it means that he says that, hey, I told you this is going to happen and see that's happening. So there are people who believe that all these streaming services, they control access to the cultural commons. So let's spend a bit on this. So commons are basically literally commons, areas or things that are common to everybody. Initially, it referred to land, which was nobody's ownership, but everybody who lived in that area could use that land for, say, grazing their cattle, etc. So that was commons, and then gradually over the last 100-150 years, we've basically expanded the definition. Now we actually talk about environmental commons. So our environment is common to everybody on this planet. So it's environmental commons. Similarly, you have cultural commons. So you notice the music that we produce, the art that we produce, the cinema that we produce, the TV shows that we produce, all these things are part of our culture and they are common to everybody. Now imagine you and I have hopefully watched Three Idiots. Now what if Three Idiots is no longer available and you can't share it with anybody else down the line? Now we will feel that somehow we have been robbed of something which was very valuable, which was very important, isn't it? So we are saying that these streaming services are controlling your access to these cultural commons. It's the streaming service that gets to decide who watches what and whether they get to watch it at all, instead of expanding cultural commons, basically instead of ensuring that more and more people are able to watch them. As did reports since denied by the show's creators that Netflix has had begun editing old episodes of Stranger Things to retroactively improve their visual effects. So once again, some things, even though they are flawed, they become part of the culture, right? So when you go ahead, change that part of the past, you are in a way once again changing the norms. So let's move on. What's less clear is whether the commonly prescribed cure for these cultural ills, or return to the material pleasures of physical media, is the right one. So he's saying that, okay, what is less clear is how do you fix these issues? So one of the solutions provided is move back to physical media, but the author says that, hey, is moving back to physical media the right decision to fix access to the cultural commons? So while the makers of Blu-ray discs claim they have a shelf life of 100 years, such statistics remain largely theoretical until they come to pass. So they're saying 100 years, but have you checked it? Do they actually last for 100 years? Moreover, they are dependent on storage conditions, not to mention the continued availability of playback equipment. So what if you have a disc but not a Blu-ray player? What will you do then? So for example, I have something called a music cassette. I don't have a player. I can't play it now. So the humble DVD has already proved far less resilient. So Blu-ray at least claims 100 years. DVD, we know, does not last for that long, with many early releases already beginning to deteriorate in quality. Digital movie purchases provide even less security. Okay, any film bought on iTunes could disappear. That's the Apple's service. Could disappear if you move to another territory with a different rights agreement and try to re-download it. It's a bold new frontier in the commodification of art. The birth of the product recall. So you think this is something new that has started. Product recall. A movie that you could watch, now you cannot watch. It's no longer available. And here is an example. After a man took to Twitter, nowadays we call it X, to bemoan losing access to Cars 2 after moving from Canada to Australia, Apple clarified that users who downloaded films to their devices would retain permanent access to those downloads even if they relocated to a hemisphere where the content was subject to a different set of rights agreements. Thanks to the company's ironclad digital rights management technology, however, such files cannot be moved or backed up, locking you into watching with your Apple account. So this entire paragraph focuses on that, okay, you are saying physical media is the solution, but then physical media even may not last long. Even if it lasts for long, you may not have a way to watch it. And then even though companies say that if you download stuff, so in a way you have a copy in your hard disk, even then you're logged into their ecosystem and you cannot watch it without that ecosystem. So anyone who does manage to acquire digital rights management free copies of their favorite films must nonetheless grapple with ever-changing file format standards. So another concern. So file format standards plus data decay. So only the regular migration of files from hard drive to hard drive can delay the inevitable in a Sisyphean battle against the ravages of digital time. So there is this myth of Sisyphus. The gods said that, okay, after death you just, so they said that Sisyphus, you will take a huge boulder and push it to the top of the mountain. But when it reaches almost the top of the mountain, it rolls back down and then Sisyphus moves back to push it up again. So when you talk about a Sisyphean battle, you're talking about something which is arduous, challenging, demanding, eternal, and futile. So that's the metaphor that is being invoked here, that you can do that. You can keep putting this effort, but it is eternal. It is it requires effort, and ultimately it will prove futile. You will lose those copies. So in a sense, none of this is new. Charlie Chaplin burned the negatives of his 1926 film A Woman of the Sea as a tax write-off, saying that okay, we have lost movies in the past as well. So Charlie Chaplin, now basically earlier on people used to shoot their movies on film, literal film, right? So that film was called a negative. So that negative was basically a property, an asset. So Charlie Chaplin burned it down and said that, hey, I've lost an asset. It is a loss to me. So he could book it. He could use that loss to reduce his income tax liabilities, his tax liabilities. So he deliberately used this. But because he burned those negatives, that movie is no longer available. Many more films have been lost through accident, negligence, or plain indifference. During the Fox Film Vault instance, back then at least cinema was defined by its ephemerality. Okay, at least back in the day people knew that okay, movies are not going to last forever. As long as it is being screened in the theater is as long as I have access to it. After that it will go. Today, with film studios keen to stress the breadth of their back catalogs, audiences may start to wonder why those same studios seem happy to set the vault alight themselves if it will help next quarter's numbers. So basically, the author says physical media will eventually lead to you're not having those copies, or you're having those copies but you're not being able to watch it because of the changing file formats or no players, etc. So he says okay, it is not new, it has happened in the past too, but at least in the past people knew that they are ephemeral. Today, that's not the case. I mean, today we are accustomed to OTT. We are accustomed to watching content on demand. He says that, okay, in the past, studios have done that, but today, the same studios say that, okay, that's their IP and that increases their business value. At the same time, if removing all those things means they are able to do more business, they won't hesitate doing that again. So let's get into the questions. Which of the following statements is suggested by the sentence back then at least cinema was defined by its ephemerality, the sense that a film was as good as gone once it left your local cinema. Okay, so let's start. Today films are expected to be available for a long time since they are no longer tied solely to their stay at the local cinema. So in the context of the passage, yes. You notice when the author says, yeah, it has happened in the past, but back then at least people knew movies are ephemeral. So in that context, the idea is that today, although we have lost movies in the past, but today we expect movies to be around forever, and therefore when we lose a movie, it hurts. We are not mentally ready for it. So it captures that essence. B, cinema is now no longer as ephemeral as it used to be earlier because the technology used for creating and preserving films has improved manifold. This is something which is not mentioned in the entire passage, so you can rule it out. Presently, there is no reason why film studios should remove access to films once they've left the local cinema. In that context, that is not the meaning. Around a century ago, people were more accepting of not having access to films once they left the local cinema. This is also good. But this essentially paraphrases the key idea, whereas A captures it in the context of the passage and gives you the implication. So if you ask me what exactly it is that the author is implying through this, suggesting through this, then the suggestion is that, hey, unlike the past, today we are not used to this idea. And that is why A will be a better option than D. Let's look at our next question. Netflix had begun editing old episodes of Stranger Things to retroactively improve their visual effects. What is the purpose of this example used in the passage? Okay, so the purpose of an example is to essentially elaborate upon or support an idea. This was present in the first paragraph. Which idea did it go on to elaborate or prove? The fact that all these streaming services are tinkering with our cultural commons, they are controlling access to it. They decide what we get to watch, what we get to see, and in what way. So let's check A, to show that art in the digital age, specifically film, is no longer sacrosanct and may be changed to suit changing tastes or technologies. Now this may appear tempting, but you realize it is not mentioning the streaming services. At the end of the day, it was given to prove that streaming services are tinkering. So this goes a little beyond what we are talking about. Moreover, are they changing it to suit changing tastes or technology, even if you introduce streaming services, or are they creating what they think is what you should watch? It's their take on what people would like to watch. Whether those things have changed or not truly is not a necessity. So this part is also going to be suspect. Let's check B. To show how unsubstantiated reports are leading to an increase in the level of distrust, not at all relevant. There are no unsubstantiated reports that are leading to level of distrust. To show that streaming services are controlling access to the cultural commons rather than expanding it. This particular part, no, this is proved by the removal of those couple of shows that are mentioned, the remake of The Witches and the heist movie Lockdown. This is not an example of this idea. To show a practice that justifies the fears of people who feel streaming services cannot be trusted to be custodians of cultural artifacts like film. Now, this absolutely comes close to those people who feel vindicated by this and should therefore be preferred over A. So, our answer to question number 8 is going to be option D. Let's check next. Which one of the following statements about art best captures the arguments made in the passage? Okay. So which statement about art best captures the argument? So the core argument made in the passage is that, yeah, people have these concerns about commons. At the same time, the solution offered is also not perfect. So let's check which particular sentence comes close to it. In the age of online subscription services, it is time to change our understanding of classic works of art being primarily immutable and easily available to the public. No, this is not the message that is sent. As art is increasingly created, stored and distributed digitally, access to it is counterintuitively likely to be made more difficult by the rapid churn in tech and the whims of host platforms. This comes close, saying this digital world has created, it is easy to watch. At the same time, there are these challenges that we face. Works of art belong to the cultural commons and hence must remain available in perpetuity irrespective of who pays for access to them. Now, it is not talking about, it's probably based on only the first paragraph, but everything else moves towards the solution and what's happening there. What the challenges of those solutions are, that's something that B captures. D, accepting retroactive changes to works of art is dangerous because it will encourage creators to not put enough effort into the original attempt, given that they can always edit or update their work later. I mean, not even an idea which is discussed in the passage. So the best one that we have here is B. So that is the one that we will go ahead and mark or choose as our answer. Let's look at the next question number 10. Which one of the following statements, if true, would best invalidate the main argument of the passage? So what is the main argument? That it's becoming difficult for us to have access to our cultural commons because of the digital world. So let's check. So A, recent research has irrefutably proven that Blu-ray discs have a shelf life of at least 100 years. Okay, this somewhat weakens. It says that, okay, these will survive for 100 years, but then there is this other concern as well, and that is, would you have a player to play it then? That concern is not getting addressed by this, so mildly weakens, yes. Improved cloud storage services have made it possible for movie collections to now be preserved in perpetuity without the need to keep migrating the files. Okay, this also weakens. It says that, okay, now there are services that allow you to keep your files. So that concern that you have to keep on moving it from hard disk to hard disk every few years, that will not happen. But then there are a couple of issues here. You can do that only with DRM free files. Right? Files that you actually own without any digital rights encumbering you whatsoever. So at least in that one specific aspect it does, but for the rest of the movies, for example, the ones on iTunes, you still won't be able to do that. C, studios and streaming services have committed to giving customers perpetual and platform independent access to the original digital content they have paid for. Okay, so now you notice you're getting perpetual access. So that was one concern, that they can take it back. They're saying that they will not take it back. Moreover, you're not being tied to any platform. So you will always have that content available for you and you can play it whenever and wherever you want as long as you've paid for it. This also weakens it. In fact, it weakens it more than these two. So this was talking about only Blu-ray. This was talking about only DRM free content. This is talking about everything. So if I compare, C so far is better, so I can eliminate these two. D, when moving to a different geographical location, customers can easily use VPNs to bypass geo-blocking and regain access to their content on any streaming services. If you compare C with D, it also includes platform independent, which was one of the concerns. D still has that platform concern. So C is still weakening it more, so you can rule it out. So you notice this is one of those cases where all the four were weakening it, and that is where we had to use our understanding of best to choose C as your answer to this particular question. So that's about this particular passage. Okay, so this is a paragraph odd one out question. Let's go ahead and check this. Urbanites also have more and better options for getting around. Uber is ubiquitous. Ubiquitous is something which is present everywhere. Easy to rent dockless bicycles are spreading. Battery powered scooters will be next. All right. When more people use buses or trains, the service usually improves because public transport agencies run more buses and trains. Worsening services on public transport, terrorist attacks in some urban metros, and a rise in fares have been blamed for this trend. Which trend? It seems more likely that public transport is being squeezed structurally as people's need to travel is diminishing as a result of smartphones, video conferencing, online shopping, and so on. Okay, there has been a puzzling decline in the use of urban public transport in many countries in the West, despite the growth in urban populations and rising employment. So when I read this, I realize that there are a lot of sentences which are talking about this, that there has been a decline in the use of urban public transport. Notice, these are the reasons cited for this trend, but it seems more likely that this is the true reason. So that leaves us with 1 and 2. Now 1 also gives us another reason for people not using urban public transport. They are using cabs, they are using bicycles, they probably will get battery powered scooters. So easy for them to move around without using public transport. Whereas second goes on to say that, hey, public transport agencies will run more buses and trains if more people start using them. So the other four are talking about a decline in the trend of urbanites using public transport and their reasons, whereas second talks about increase, which basically contradicts what the other four sentences stand for. So second must be the odd one out for us here. There. Okay, so that's our answer to this particular question. Alright, so this is another one of our sentence placement questions. Let's check. The brain is not organized the way you might set up your home office or bathroom medicine cabinet. Let's move to the paragraph. You can't just put things anywhere you want to. So one very question that is in my mind here is where? The evolved architecture of the brain is haphazard and disjointed and incorporates multiple systems, each of which has a mind of its own. Evolution does not design things and it does not build systems. It settles on systems that historically conveyed a survival benefit. There is no overarching grand planner engineering the system so that they work harmoniously together. The brain is more like a big old house with piecemeal renovations done on every floor and less like new construction. Now, you notice, in the lost sentence, you know by now if you're working with me that I call this a lost sentence. We are comparing brain with home office or bathroom medicine cabinet and saying your brain is not like that. So when you talk about your home office, your bathroom medicine cabinet, you can put things anywhere you want to. But you think brain is not like that. So if you want an answer to this where, this sentence has to go here. Then it elaborates and then introduces the correct metaphor. So blank 1 is going to be your best solution for this. Which corresponds to option D. So that is the one that will be our answer to this particular question. So that is the end of part 1 of this session, where we have covered half of the section. In part 2, I will take you through the remaining 12 questions, and that will take you through the entire slot 1. So stay tuned and make sure that you do turn in to check the part 2 as well. So let's pause here and I'll see you in the next one. Take care.